how exciting is this when two Canadians get together? One right now is in Dubai, the other one's in Los Angeles. That's pretty cool, eh? So welcome, Maxine.
Thank you, Mark. It's exciting to be here.
It's great to see your colorful and energetic and energizing and beautiful smile and the whole bit here. And so we're going to show people why you really deserve to be here on the Leaders Who Care series, and you do, and just share a little bit about all that. Let's start by briefly giving a little bit of your background, not necessarily the business yet, but where you're from, which your family, favorite color, something you've never told anybody that maybe you want to reveal now, or something like that. Who knows? But just tell us a little bit about Maxine.
Who Maxine is. Okay. Well, I'll start with I am I am a trained economist, former investment banker, grew up in Alberta, was raised on a farm, like milked cows, rode pigs, played sports. I have two entrepreneurial parents who are hippies who believed that you could do whatever you wanted and let me live a full life of color. When I asked my dad where he's going every day as a child, he'd say, "I'm going crazy. You want to come?" And that's my parent. My mom, she was a hairdresser at the most popular salon in the town that we lived in, which meant she was basically known by all. So whenever I went grocery shopping, everyone would come say hi. I had these really eclectic parents. Yeah, that's probably like the basis. I think being raised by two really entrepreneurial and open parents who are just like wanting you to find your path and do whatever makes you happy. I didn't realize how special that was until now, and seeing that come to fruition and what is the result of that freedom to just go rock and roll. My dad always says, rocking in a free world, Max, like just keep going. So that was and then also being raised on a farm, I didn't realize how special that was, having a deep relationship with nature from a very young age, knowing how to put a full day's work in, collaborating with 15 cousins while feeding animals and keeping them alive. Those all played a role in my youth. And I was the athlete of the year at my school and the girl that got 100% in math. So it was an odd combination. But yeah, I played all the sports, could never pick one. That's shine through. I could never decide on one, which never allowed me to go too far in one, but far enough in a lot of them. Yeah, that's kind of like the basis.
That's a good basis. I love that. And it's interesting on a farm because one of the things that's happening out there right now is they're trying to, and we're working on projects like this, trying to get the youth to look at farming again and using all the technology and whatnot versus not going into farming because it's really hard and it hasn't necessarily been romanticized as much anymore. So it seems like a great background. And man, I almost love to interview your parents. They sound super cool. You have siblings, brothers, sisters?
I do. I'm the eldest. I have a younger brother who's 4 years younger and a younger sister who's 14 years younger. And they are two of my best friends. My family is like my best. We're very, very close. We're very tight. We have all the time. And yeah, we've got a lot in common. Again, being raised by two parents that are very, like I said, entrepreneurial and free makes three very ambitious children that are hungry and they're very their own persons.
So the most important question is it the Calgary Flames or the Edmonton Oilers that are the family team?
Edmonton for sure.
All right. Gretzky and Connor McDavid. Nice.
That's it. And my mom cut Gretzky's hair once. So we've got
there you go. Did she keep any for a souvenir? That would be creepy.
Not quite.
So as a kid and a teenager, you kind of gave us a sense with the math and the sports. So were you a little Michael J. Fox like he was on Family Ties type of person? Or were you making or breaking rules? Were you storytelling? What were you like?
I was the kid that was friends with everyone, the art kids, the math kids, the sports kids, the nerds, the jocks. I was a definite rule breaker. I broke every rule. You tell me not to do something, that is the first thing I'm gonna do. I was
I'll
a
keep
bit of
that
a
in
rebel.
mind.
Yeah, I got in a lot of trouble. But not like not bad trouble, just curiosity trouble.
Hmm.
And and I would always push the limits. You know, I remember like realizing that certain classes weren't worth my time, and I would fake call in as my mom and go instead study or create something else. You know, my grandparents would always be like, "Don't go to the second floor of the barn; it's dangerous." And that's exactly where I'm gonna go. Yeah, and I'd be the kid that would host parties or events, but I would make sure to invite all groups. I was all, for all the way through from elementary to high school to university to my master's. I would always host these events and bring in, yeah, different pockets of friends and really try to get them to integrate through different activities. And that was kind of central to who I was. I was always, yeah, not in one crowd. You never find me in one crowd.
It's interesting, based on one of our conversations recently about how Canadians like to talk to different people from different places and be engaged. And I was talking about the same thing in Montreal, that we didn't say we needed to be diverse; we just did it.
Yeah. Ah, that's interesting. Yeah, it's just natural.
Pretty,
Yeah.
it is pretty interesting, pretty cool. So tell us about the early part of your journey. You started with commerce and economics, University of
Yeah.
Alberta. In case anybody around the world doesn't know, that's like in the western part of Canada. And a master's at Queen's, which is one of the most beautiful universities anywhere in the world. The way it is. And what intrigued you to go that route?
So I picked finance as my first degree because I was really good at math and I thought that was a good fit. And also, someone explained that the stock market was this place where people came together, where people had money but no ideas, and people had ideas but no money. And this place called the stock market allowed people to exchange. And I never really lost, I really, really enjoyed that concept.
Hmm.
And then someone else explained that where you invest your money is what is built in society. And I thought, well, that's interesting. If I could direct then where money is spent, perhaps I could direct what we build in this world. And I was always interested in investing money. I think I bought my first stock before I went to university, and I liked this idea of picking and choosing and letting your money grow for you. My mom bought the Rich Dad Poor Dad game, and so we always played that as you know we played. It was in my family line. So all of those things spoke to me, and so I thought BCom for sure. I'll go do my BCom, and yeah, just naturally loved finance and the idea of how money flows and really enjoyed learning it. I got to actually was chosen as one of the top 10 students to manage our university's investment fund. It was a $2 million fund,
Hmm.
and they chose 10 students out of thousands to manage it for 2 years. And we had a Bloomberg terminal and we had a board of advisors that we had to speak to, and we had to come up with a strategy. And that really also gave me an in look to Bloomberg and what was behind this giant terminal that allowed money to flow globally. And I just remember getting access to that tool and like staying up and learning it and watching and thinking about all this money and how it was exchanging hands and learning about how money works and how inflation works and interest rates work and printing money works. And I just found it fascinating. And
Super
that taught
cool.
me a lot. Yeah.
Yeah, super cool. And it's what alternative thinking, if you want to call it that, of the university to go beyond just the courses, and how you can get involved and really learn real life stuff, which is a question mark these days in a lot of colleges and whatnot. What are we learning, and can we take it to reality of life and getting the right jobs and entrepreneurship? So good for them. Coming from Alberta, it
Yeah.
kind of made sense that the energy sector would be something that you'd be involved in.
Yeah.
Claim to fame for Alberta to a great degree.
Yeah.
Share with us
Yeah.
your experiences in an industry that's done incredibly well over the decades, but now facing transition, political
Yeah.
division to some degree, for them to go to more renewable, sustainable resources, which is clearly showing up in your subsequent career moves also. So tell us a little bit about that experience and how it moved you forward.
Yeah, great question. I'd say my experience. So I was, as part of this portfolio fund, we each got a section of our portfolio, and I was responsible for the energy portfolio, which was all of the yeah, buying and selling of these giant energy stocks
Hmm.
and companies and monitoring them. And I was really excited to have that role because it was a large chunk of our portfolio. And you're like you said, Alberta is really energy dominant. But what I realized in managing that, we always had to go to our advisors and yeah, communicate what we were trading and why. And it was in the second year that I started to look at these Bloomberg terminals and trying to decide where to allocate my money between these like 5 to 6 major players. And I realized on the Bloomberg terminal, there wasn't really as many factors to decide which one deserved the investment than the other. They were so similar. You know, they had their price earnings ratio, their dividend yields, their traction, their description. And I was like, I don't know how to divert it, but I was from a very young age very interested in sustainability. And I was introduced to the UN Sustainable Development Goals very early on. And I thought,
No.
I want to pick the company that is starting to tell me what they're going to do to be more in alignment with the UN Sustainable Development Goals. And I remember looking at Bloomberg and I'm like, how come Bloomberg doesn't tell me how many emissions they produce? How come Bloomberg doesn't tell me how much they pay their employees or these other indicators I was looking to differentiate between these companies. And I went to the board and I said, I'd like to dive in. I'd like to learn, how these companies are thinking about reducing their emissions, because clearly this is going to become important. And this was, 15 years ago now, 14 years ago now. So quite a while ago, but the thought of a carbon price had been dropped in some circles in Alberta because we were so highly leveraged in the oil sector.
Hmm.
And and that was when I first faced the resistance to do that. And I really realized how one, like, we weren't diversified thinkers in Alberta. We were, let's put all our eggs in this one basket and don't question it a little bit more. And I was surprised, even though I felt like it was a very valid argument,
Hmm.
at the resistance, and that I was a student. I was like, you guys, what else is the difference between these 5 main companies that drill oil? And I can look at their production data and how much plan they have to like explore and find new pockets to find oil or gas or process it, right? Yes, I can decipher this, but don't you think the ones that are going to be the most innovative are going to be the ones that learn how to do this most efficiently? But yeah, it was a really tricky thing to, especially in Alberta. And then I became a vegetarian in Alberta. Okay. In Alberta, the second main category is beef, the farmers. And so now I'm being pegged as a hippie
Right.
uh, on this
Well, that
team.
fits with the rockin' parents.
Yeah, that's true. I kind of was, but I don't like that hippie has this stigma. It's like I see the value in other negative externalities that adjust my behavior. My behavior is in alignment with my values. And so if I care about, sustainable development, if I care about supply chain, if I care about the treatment of humans and animals, then I'm going to adjust my decisions such that companies are in alignment with those. And yeah, it was I kind of, I was the only one of the only, there was only 2 girls on the team. I was a vegetarian managing the energy section, preaching that we should look into the companies, like, what is the mission of these guys?
I can. So, did Alberta close the borders for you to come back from Queens to Alberta, or what?
Well, I don't live there anymore.
There you go. So it's interesting because we founded Fifth Element on the basis that leaders in businesses can do way better when they're doing good at the same time. So
Yeah.
with that, a couple of questions. You joined IISD SSI as an economist. Effectively, you founded, which I really like, Doing Economics That Works,
Yeah.
for special projects that you did. It was somewhat of a distinct change from where you were before, but I'm getting it now with the vegetarian and all that stuff. So how did that happen? Were there both positive and negative experiences, kind of like you're touching on a little bit, that led to these and adopting the SDGs in a more free and committed way?
Yeah, well, so like I said, okay, so the resistance started happening and I wasn't able to push through these concepts like I thought I was going to be able to. And I
Hmm.
said, that's okay. Okay, I'll go try to use my co-op term to work for an investment banking firm and see what that's like on that side. And face the same resistance, if not stronger, in that department. And again, the questions I was asking at the table were not of interest. What is the vision of the founder? What is the mission of the company? How does this impact their employees? How does this impact the global price of things? What does the global price impact society? Because these hedge funds, I started to learn, trade at such scales that can really influence, I mean, an entire ecosystem and price of a product that can then impact society. And there's a lot of examples in history, like when the price of corn was shot up because of hedge funds decision makers, and that put a lot of Mexican families in a precarious situation. And I just found that the hedge funds were completely detached from the outcome. They didn't follow their actions down the line. It was so siloed. They were just at their desk looking at numbers, trading all day, and not thinking about at all the impacts or ramifications of trading. And so that's when I made the decision, this isn't the field for me. It's not holistic enough. And so I said, I'm going to go back and do my master's in economics, because from what I learned, that economics is the study of environment, social, and economic outcomes, the combination of all three. And I said, okay, I'll take my finance, and hopefully with the addition of environmental and social, maybe the companies, maybe that frame of thinking will help lead me to companies like ISD and the SSI that think about these at a more ecosystem approach. And that's kind of how I led there. And doing economics that works, before I had gotten recruited to go work at ISD, really was this idea of, companies aren't measuring these negative or positive externalities. They're not modeling them. And if something does not have a price, then it does not make its way on the balance sheet, and it does not make its way in the decision room. So if an ecosystem doesn't have a price associated with it, or the social benefits of giving someone poor dental benefits, or you can think of a bunch of positive externalities. If it has not been modeled and has a price, it does not get included in the discussion in the same way. And so doing economics that works was, okay, we will provide economic modeling to come up with a proxy price so that it can be included in that decision making. And so that's where I kind of started to add all these things together, and finally get to put it at the table and be like, this does matter.
It's super cool because a lot of times we don't see the thread of our progression in career and life and whatnot, but there is one.
Yeah.
And sometimes windows open, or doors open, you go in, you don't go in, but there's a reason. When you look back, it's interesting to see how that happens. The fourth industrial revolution is pretty well technology, AI, VR, AR, et cetera, et cetera. But the fifth industrial revolution is about humanity, which is a big part of our name also, but with the fifth element. And we engage with clients on the intersection and the harmony between impact and talent. And to the point, one of the points to what you said about leaders started to realize on the talent part that they're not going to get the talent unless they do care about the stuff you're talking about, and they do answer those questions, they do report. And that applies to consumers too, as a matter of fact, not just talent coming. There's really good talent like yourself still wants to make great money, but wants to have purpose, wants to make a difference, or at least not a negative difference at best, type of thing. So with respect to that, your background has been a lot of research and knowledge and hippieing and insights and storytelling, and looking for what the impact is and where the investment dollars are going. Leads me to the big question. I'm going to pick your brain here, so to speak. Tell us about what's something that I'm super excited, because we've talked a little bit about it already, obviously. Your current mission, as the CEO and founder of Pick My Brain, when the light bulb went, this is what I got to do. I got to put my energy, pun intended, towards this. And the potential you see in humans making an impact, engaging on your platform.
Very good. Okay, I'll start with when the light bulb went on about Pick My Brain and this idea that knowledge commerce could potentially become the new e-commerce.
Mm-hmm.
And I was working at ISD, which is this think tank that worked on behalf of the planetary boundaries using policy to help shape decisions so that countries stay in alignment with these natural boundaries that the planet has. And I loved the mission. I loved working at these tables and watching countries come together to negotiate how to stay in alignment with that. But it was when I saw the dismantling of a policy that was worked on for a number of years because a change in government happened one too many times, that I was like, this is not the tool to create lasting change. I was really shocked, and I was probably a little bit green and optimistic to think that an economically sound policy would just stay in place because of the research that was done and the analysis that showed that this is a good decision.
Mm-hmm.
But a leader could come in and be like, nope, I don't like it. And that was it. And I didn't know that that could happen. The second thing that really pulled me off was like the understanding that countries could not care about something if they chose not to care about it. And I saw a country just not care about the extinction of animals. And I hadn't recognized yet in my career that a country could not prioritize that. And it makes sense now that I'm older, but I was just really shocked. I thought we as humanity and society agreed on certain things, but that isn't quite sit at these tables. So I just had a bit of environmental depression after a number of years, and it was wearing on me. And I was like, this is not going to go fast enough based on the data I've seen.
Right.
All this work can get removed. I'm not interested in working on something so hard if one person can come along and be like, no, not my thing. And so I was just getting a little itchy about that. And along comes Airbnb, this company that monetized a shared asset that was not on the market, and they put it on the market. And I remember my economic brain was like, whoa, this is going to create so much economic, environmental, and social impact globally. And I was just starting to calculate that amount using, the pricing and the models that I had worked on for so long. And I was like, I think this company is going to create more economic, environmental, and social impact than any policy I've ever seen.
Mm-hmm.
Then I looked up the founders, and they were my age. And they did it through a peer-to-peer marketplace using technology, and they didn't even go through the government. And that was one light bulb. That was a massive light bulb for me. And I was like, I need to be here.
That was a headlight like
Yeah.
bulb.
What? And as an economist, a peer-to-peer marketplace is the most efficient form of transferring value between the most amount of players. And so that really spoke to me too. And I was just amazed. And when I like looked up the founders, and they were three guys that were exactly my age that just set out to pursue this and raised money. And I was like, no way, like, what is this world that I have never been introduced to? And within a couple weeks, I made the decision that I was going to quit my job, and I was going to give myself 1 year to make the transition. And I called it my year on. And I said, well, Max, you went to university for 7 years to learn how to be an investment banker, to learn how to be an economist. What would happen if you gave yourself 1 year to study whatever you needed to do to make the transition to tech, to this marketplace world? And that's what I did. I had a conversation with the CEO at the time, and I said, I need to go study this. I feel so pulled to the amount of impact that I know that this company Airbnb is going to make. I was like, this company is going to be so big. I remember telling him, I was like, it's going to be the biggest company ever. I swear.
Did you buy stock?
I didn't buy stock because they actually put so much later. And it was really hard to get in, but I should have. They are significant to my story in so many ways. But so I did that, and I took a year on, and I made myself a university schedule. I used the same framework, but I put in everything I wanted to learn. And so I spent like 3 months onboarding myself into every peer-to-peer marketplace I could find. I spent 3 months learning where online education was at. Onboarding Coursera had just come out. Udemy and Udacity, these nano degrees were coming out. I was like, what is this? How do they administer this? So I onboarded myself into all of these and took courses. I drove across Canada. I knew I wanted to see my entire country. And so I drove and camped the entire way, which was significant. On that route, I
Did you have,
worked
oh, that I
on,
got to ask, did you have a VW van to do it in with a flower power
not
thing
quite,
on
not quite, not quite. Maybe in my mind, just a Subaru.
it?
And my boyfriend at the time, I convinced my boyfriend at the time to also quit his job and go on this adventure with me.
Damn.
Um,
All right.
yeah, yeah. I sell a good story. I can sell a good story, you know, I like it. And yeah, it was really fun. And we also went to Maui for a full month, and we used that month. I always said, like, I have all these books I want to read, but how do I not have time to read them? How is that even possible? And so the entire month of Maui was strictly based on reading. And I Excel spreadsheet. I was like, this is how many pages I have to read. This is how many I have to break down per
Oh my
day. Kind
God.
of a nerd. But I need to optimize. I had 1 year, I had to do my master's. And I remember how hard my master's was in economics. And so I pursued this year on with just as much tenacity. And yeah, it was on this journey that I started to realize a few things. First of all, I think everyone should take a year on, and ask themselves, it is such an
I'm going to buy
interesting,
a van.
yeah, or buy a van. Yeah, but to go through the process and be like, what would you want to learn for a year if you put your heart and soul into it and you gave yourself, I gave myself $30,000, which is how much it cost me to do my master's to take this year on. I was like, this is how much you get, budget it yourself. What do you want to learn? And just even going through the process and building my schedule was a lesson.
I bet.
But yeah, it was fun. And it was on this journey that I kept running into the power of a conversation, how much conversations influenced me on that journey, pivoted my direction, expanded my scope, connected me to everyone in my network on a deeper level because I took the time to sit down with those that I was impressed with and go have a meaningful conversation. And at all of that time that was happening, my mom was also retiring, successful entrepreneur. And I remember she said one day, like, I was like, what are you going to do now? Like, how are you going to share your knowledge? And she's like, oh, I don't know. And I was
Hmm.
like, what do you don't know how to share? Like, I had a moment. I was like, what do you mean you don't know how to share your knowledge? And I thought about it and I was like, yeah, that's actually hard to do. She would have had to build a website,
Hmm.
build a calendar integration, let people know that she was open and available. All the three things that would be very challenging for someone of my mom's generation to do and to pursue after working for 25 years so hard.
Sure.
And I just had this moment of being like, I can't believe it's so hard to share your knowledge. Like, what is the purpose of learning if you can't pass it down? And yeah, and it was almost like an environmental thing. Like we had to capture carbon. Like we worked on a lot of carbon capture and storage to reduce emissions. And I was like, well, why aren't we capturing people's knowledge and redistributing it? And I remember looking up how many people retired and realized I was like, this is a massive problem. I didn't know that was such a challenge. And all those things started to collude. And I had this moment when I was driving up a mountain, my car broke down. I was like, I wonder if you could monetize a conversation. Like I monetized everything in my career. I packaged and priced and monetized and did models for trees, for ecosystems, for carbon, for social benefits. And I thought, a conversation with my mom would be insane for anyone to have. And I realized on this journey how many conversations changed my life. And knowledge, I knew I never wanted to work in a business that had anything to do with a product because I understood that any product was harm on the planet. And then I was like, knowledge economy, like, can I monetize knowledge? Like, what is the value of knowledge? What is the value of conversation? So really I could package that. And I just remember that night I couldn't sleep and my mind was going crazy. And I was like, this is it. This is what I want to work on.
How
And so
did you
that's
differentiate that? A quick question here. How did you differentiate that from mentors or organizations like SCORE and things like that?
Well, I realized that my mom didn't like, I had been part of a few mentorship programs and just found them very administrative heavy, just as similar as like applying for a government job. Like I didn't enjoy them. I didn't get to pick my mentor.
Hmm.
They were process heavy. They were uncreative. I never felt excitement to go. I always felt like, okay, I'll get this thing done. And
Right.
like my mom didn't want to apply to any of them either. None of them fit what she wanted to do. And I was like, okay, they're not quite there. And they're not a conversation. Like I don't necessarily, mentorship is like, it's such a loaded term. Like what is mentorship? What is coaching? What is consulting? What is advising? Like every
Right.
person has a different perspective of what that is. But I'm just like, no, spending time with human beings meaningfully and asking about stories and experiences and asking perspectives and seeing if you can work together on something is a combination of all that. So I just thought it could be done better. Just like hotels, VRBO existed before Airbnb, but
Mhm.
what did Airbnb do? They made it sexy. Electric cars existed before Tesla, but what did Elon do? He made it sexy. And so I was like, no, conversations, mentorship needs to be sexy. It needs to be it needs to be more than it is. It's
And,
not there.
and it
Yeah.
sounds like it relates, we talked about the thread, it relates to the human connection that you're talking about before. Like you're actually excited about talking to somebody and the person is excited about talking to that person also.
Yes. Yes. And it actually looped back to like when I was telling you, I was always the person that brought different people together in a room.
Right.
And I always saw the power of that. I always saw like it was so interesting what you could curate when you put artists and jocks and math people in a room and made them interact. Right. Those crossovers didn't happen. And I realized going through my career at ISD, I had a nickname. I was called the active collaboration girl, ACC, because I was like, we have offices in all these countries. We're working on some really big initiatives, and I work in the climate change department, and I have no idea what the adaptation is doing or the finance team is doing. Why? How is it that we are working on a mission and I can't speak to other projects? And so at that company, I created these lunch and learns globally. Before Zoom, I got all the company to call in before this was like a thing that was easy to do, and was like, we are going to share stories of what we are working on and align them with how they contribute to the mission. And so I got this
It's so brilliant. Just as a little thing, it's so brilliant because when we talk about impact and talent,
yeah,
your finance department, your supply chain department, your this, your that, and every company, they're all impacting each other's impact, if you will.
yeah,
And they got to have the talent that wants to come together and learn. Okay, we are in the same company. We're not separate in companies to work together and share our knowledge.
yeah,
Yeah, yeah. Great for you.
exactly. And yet it's so funny because I'm like, I don't even find it brilliant. I just find it efficient.
Well,
No one
Deloitte partner told me a long time ago, brilliance is simple, and I started getting it.
yeah, maybe I'll start to understand that a little bit deeper as I go through this path. But yeah, like it was a no-brainer to me. And so again with mentorship, like they'd always match you with someone that was like, sometimes I want to spend times with multiple people too. They would only align you, they would pick someone for you and then you'd have one. And I'm not that girl. I'm like, I like to take courses everywhere. I like to meet different types of people. And it's through that integration where I get my best ideas and where I start to understand how the system actually works.
So then tell
Not
us how you transform that to pick my brain and what that means and what's going to happen.
yeah, okay. So I had that idea and I said, okay, like what's a conversation worth? How do I model that? How do I find the value to that? And I said, well, the first thing I'm gonna have to do is I'm gonna have to prove to people that people are willing to pay for it. Cause I know I would, but I don't know if other people would. So that was the first plan of attack. And the way I did that was full circle back to Airbnb. Airbnb had just launched experiences, which was basically they were trying to democratize tourism and allow travel agents to offer experiences through their platform peer to peer. And so I went onto their experience marketplace. I utilized their access to a market. I didn't launch an offer that was tourism related, but I offered a conversation. And I was like, okay, let's see if people will pay for this. And the very first offer I monetized was called Coffee and Conversation with a Vancouver startup founder. And it was $50. I charged $50. And I said, this is for whoever wants to talk about the future of work, the future of education, and any ideas that are brewing in your mind. Okay. And I listed it and I sat there and I was like, Well, I'm just, a girl that just started a startup. I'm not anyone special. So
Well,
let's
that's up for discussion, but go ahead.
well, like I'm not a famous person by any means or some influencer. So I was like, I have no idea what the uptake is going to be on this. And $50, who knows? Turns out 60 people from around the world booked and paid me for that coffee and conversation in the span of like 4 months. The demand was so heavy. I was going for coffee and conversations like multiple times a week. And I was like, no way. And not only was that the occurrence, every single one of them, 100% of them were a 10 out of 10 experience for me because that person was coming to me talking about what was near and dear to my heart, and I could come at it with energy, and it would just be this very inspiring collision.
It's
And I,
interesting also, sorry to interrupt, is Airbnb had to factor in, would people allow strangers to come into their home? And
yeah,
would that be okay? And you
yeah,
had to factor in, am I going to meet weirdos or
yeah,
who knows what in this
yeah,
human connection also?
totally. And what I realized is that when you craft an offer and you formalize it and you put it out there, you will attract the people that are interested in that offer.
Hmm.
Okay, so I naturally filtered the best people that would be the best match for me, even more than my home, because a home is very 4 bedrooms, 2 bathrooms, looks like this. I'm like coffee with a girl talking about the future of work, the future of education, and your ideas. And I attracted people who wanted to spend money on that and time doing that. So it actually was the biggest code crack of attracting the right people that came to me and paid me. And it wasn't the $3,000 that I unlocked from that offer that made me go all in on Pick My Brain, and we'll discuss where I think it's going. It was what those conversations unlocked that were millions of dollars worth of value, and insight. And so, like I always say, the first conversation was my first employee, ended up becoming my first employee. The second person that booked me ended up writing my first $50,000 VC check when I was like ready to go. The third person that booked me, I fell in love with. He was the CEO of the 30th fastest growing company in Canada, and he found me because, and we just, our minds just went crazy. And then I had this global network at the end of this that I could go stay with any of these people. It wasn't just, we became friends, because when you dig in at that level, typically it's like, when you're in my country, come to my home. I'd like to introduce you to other people. Like the amount of value, I couldn't even capture it. I was so blown away with what it came and how much I learned. Like I had a beekeeper, one of the best beekeepers in the world, that booked my session and implanted his vision into my brain, which was like a beekeeping station on every university, because he told me all the things about bees that were going on. And that got me to download a whole bunch of stuff about bees. Like, that's one story of like 50 to 60. And I could speak to every one of them. One day I'll write a book of what all those conversations unlocked. But I was convinced after that. I was like, this is it. I was like, I should be able to go for a coffee and conversation with anybody in the world, and anybody can offer this. And there
I,
would be
I Yeah, I agree. And you know what they say in LA is they you got to keep them wanting more so you can do a sequel. So I'm going to move towards the conclusion at this point. But
yeah.
so tell us where Pick. I know you're in Dubai raising capital. You've been doing that. Where's Pick My Brain at, and where you going?
Yeah, so fast forward 4 years later, we have raised about $600 so far, and mostly bootstrapped our company. And with that, we've built this global marketplace that allows anyone to package, price, gift, or sell their knowledge worldwide. We have 1,000 brains on our platform from over 88 countries. We've done just under $1 million worth of sales on our marketplace, and have about 20,000 people who have interacted with the site. We haven't spent $1 on marketing. We've just been really honing in on the experience, and working with, how do you package and price and sell knowledge? How does knowledge commerce work? And how can we make that seamless, right? We want to make it as easy to book and buy a conversation as it is to buy a product online. And that takes some engineering and some UX UI design. And so we've done about 20,000 bookings through the platform to work through that. And now, like I said, yeah, I'm ready to take this. It's really come quite a long way from that first day. We've taught so many people how to build revenue streams. We've seen how many different varieties of ways people can use our tool. And now we're actually starting to build knowledge marketplaces for other communities that want to unlock this between people that already have no love and trust between them. So yeah, that's where we're going in our mission right now. Yeah, oh, go ahead, sorry.
No, go ahead.
I was gonna say, like, what I'm striving for now is to facilitate 10 million conversations and one-on-one connections between the world's people every year, engineer that to happen. And in doing so, our stats and our economic model says that that could unlock $1 billion worth of knowledge, commerce, or value.
Yeah, spectacular. I'm excited. I think we're excited. We're gonna figure out how to help you on this. It's an amazing thing. Only a Canadian could make happen. Sorry, I had to say that. And and with from rock and rolling, hippie parents and everything. But
yeah.
and I love all that happened. And with everything that's happened over the last 3 years, the year, as one client told me, year 2020 was the year that flew by slowly. And stuff. What are you most grateful for in your journey there, and what are you most hopeful for?
I'm actually so grateful for COVID. In a roundabout way. I know it caused a lot of pain, but I think it caused a lot of creative destruction, and I think it broke down. It really pushed us back to thinking about what is important,
Right.
and it forced us to connect in different ways, go about work in different ways, try different models out. And I think we're not in this economic lull. I really think we're in this creative destruction phase, and something that's coming out on the other side is so much more beautiful and conscious. And like you said, the fifth element is coming. We got to see death very close, and that makes you reevaluate things. I think this next economy needs to be more values aligned, and human driven. Capitalism needs to change forms a little bit.
Mm-hmm.
I'm so grateful for how good people are. As someone who's had thousands of conversations now with people from all around the world, I can tell you that the drive to making the world a better place and to wanting to contribute and be of service to as many people as they can is so real in each and every one of us. And people are open and transparent and helpful beyond measure. I would not even be close to where I'm at if it were not for people that help me share this vision and mission, and offer their connections to me and the people that are most trusted in their network. And I just trust the universe at this point that it just leads me to the right people if you articulate where it is you want to go. And that's full circle. Thank you to my parents who just supported that from day one. So I feel comfortable in it now.
Well, I think
Yeah.
we're where we started about showing why you need to be on, you deserve to be on a Leaders Who Care series is pretty clear. That I think we did that. And thank you so much for sharing all that. And we will be engaging and watching you as you not only travel through Canada as you did, but the world right now. So
Yeah.
thank you so much for being on and sharing your experiences and your story.
Thanks for investing in Leaders Who Care.